Flooding is the nation's most common and costliest disaster. 90% of all U.S. disasters involve flooding. During the past 30 years, flooding in the U.S. has killed an average of 85 people a year and caused roughly $8 billion a year in property damage. Clark County's last big flood in 1996 damaged or destroyed nearly 300 homes and caused $25 million in property losses.
So in this region, the main factor that leads to big flood events is long duration storm events. So rain occurring over days and days and days. If you think of the soil around here kind of like a sponge, if you think of a sponge being dry, water goes into the sponge, nothing's going to drip out the bottom. But after a while, after you keep pouring water onto it, it has to go somewhere, has to run off or go through the sponge. It's sort of like how the soil works in Clark County. Now, the two big floods that we've had of recent memory, 1996 and then the Christmas Day flood of 1964, those floods also had a lot of snow melts and relatively warm rainfall. So the rain came, melted all the snow, and that additional rainwater and runoff contributed to large stormwater flood events.
In preparation, residents should purchase flood insurance, especially those living in a floodplain area. It is also a good idea to have an evacuation plan in place before a flood happens.
First thing you should think about is, do I have flood insurance? Now, a lot of people think it's built into their homeowner's insurance, but it's not. It's a separate flood insurance policy. You also might think, okay, well, a big storm was coming. I can buy it then. I'll watch the weather and wait for a storm event to come. But there's actually a 30-day waiting period for an insurance policy. So you really need to plan ahead. I mean, days like today when it's sunny are the days you should be thinking about, do I live in a flood-prone area? Do I have flood insurance?
Some tips to follow during a flood include not driving or walking through a flooded area, stay away from power lines and electrical wires, shut off gas and electricity at the house, and move valuable items upstairs.
The biggest thing I would say is if you are stuck at home and you haven't evacuated, you should go. I mean, evacuate if you can. That's the biggest thing. If you are seeing flood water on the ground, I would avoid trying to walk through flood water. Even half a foot of flood water can knock you off your feet. And the biggest cause of deaths in a flood event is drowning. The same thing goes for your car. If you see flood waters on the road, the most likely place to drown is in your car.
When returning home after a flood occurs, be sure gas and power are turned off. Do not use matches or cigarette lighters or other open flames in the structure. Until water is determined to be safe, boil drinking water for at least 1 minute.
I think the first thing is getting mentally prepared for a long, hard cleanup. It can be devastating to evacuate your home and then come back and see it's damaged, see there needs a lot of cleanup and repair. It might not even be safe to enter. I mean, that can just be a traumatic experience. And then secondly, I would say, call an electrician before you go in, before you turn your power back on, especially if you see water damage on the outside. The floor may be unsafe to walk on. There may be bowing or water on that floor, even your ceiling. There's a lot of things that you might not be visible to the naked eye, but are things that you should watch out for. And then in terms of cleaning up, it's a long process, but oftentimes there's a lot of neighborhood support for stuff like this. People kind of gather around and rally, and that's a great thing. Talk to your neighbors about it, and help them out, and they'll help you out. Help clean up your house. If you have an insurance agent. If you have insurance, I would call your insurance agent right away, make a claim.
Contact Clark County to learn more about your property and any flooding risks. Call 360-397-6118, extension 4944, or visit the website at clark.wa.gov/public-works/flood-safety.